Welcome to A Free Solution. I'm Kevin Mulciaros today, joined by Tim, the Freedom Variant O'Connor.
Hey, Kevin, I felt like I disappointed you last week when I didn't have a fresh conspiracy. So this week,
Oh, goodness.
I brought three, bro. Government schools, they're not really working.
I
January
mean,
6th, Kevin, was not an insurrection, and Canadian smugness is thanks to the U.S. military. Those are just conspiracies
all right.
that I want to
So,
work.
so lightning round conspiracy addressing. Number one, the data backs that up. You might be right on that. I don't think it's a
Okay.
conspiracy. Number two, I mean, it kind of sounds like an opinion, but it's fine.
Yeah.
Number three, I don't know, maybe show me the evidence.
It's actually obviously an opinion, but well, let's
Number
be
three, I mean,
honest.
you're applying like causation, right?
Yeah.
It's
I do. Yeah, I'm implying causation for sure. Like Canadian smugness directly correlates to the proximity to the U.S. military. Let's go with that.
yeah. Okay. Um, yeah, you have to play that one out for me. I don't know,
I'm
man. I
I'm,
know
I'm a conspiracy theorist. Do I really have to? I can just say it, and then maybe later
we
I'll get.
just trust you, like we trust the scientists who tell us that
Yeah,
steaks cooked in the microwave are better.
yeah. Trust
Uh,
the science, bro. That's
trust the
it.
science. I did see your tweet on that. I was like, man, he's got a point there. What? Don't trust the science on the people saying steaks are better in the microwave. No,
That's
that's
just
just
crazy. That was crazy.
nope. That's incorrect.
I actually read the whole article, and like I'll be honest, like there's a point, like if I wanted to, you know, if there's a point I wanted to make, like there's something reasonable about it, like what he's saying. But I think we should save this kind of wild information for the show. We shouldn't just dump it all into the pre-show, or it could be either the show or the post-show, or
Yeah, maybe
perhaps.
do in the post show. We talk about steaks. Although I did watch there was it was one of those YouTube like cooking channels, and they decided to like try every single possible way of cooking a steak,
Yeah.
and then like eat them. So like, okay, we're gonna do a microwave steak, and we're gonna do a boiled steak, and we're gonna do
Ooh,
yeah,
ooh, ooh.
and then steak cooked like directly on a fire, or sous vide steak, or
Oh,
yeah.
yeah, no, there could be problems with that. Hey, probably before we get into the show, shout out to our friend John Barron, who's recovering from a recent surgery. He's a pretty tough guy, pretty determined, so I think he's going to be okay. But I'm sure he's in a lot of pain. I hope he's checking out the show tonight. Hope you feel
Yeah,
better, pal.
we're thinking of you, John.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So
All right. Well, suppose we should get started. Appreciate all the folks joining us. We're going to be going live in 10 seconds.
Now, an hour of clarity for exhausted people of our nation mired in toxic partisanship. Left versus right, us versus them. While we pay to keep our politicians fighting, how do we, the people, rise up and solve the great challenges of our time? We do it by embracing freedom and liberty. There may be no such thing as a free lunch, but this hour is as close as it gets. Welcome to A Free Solution.
All right. Welcome to A Free Solution. I'm Kevin Mulciaros today, joined by Tim, the Freedom Variant O'Connor.
I'm here, Kevin. How are you, brother?
Oh, living the dream, Tim. Living the dream.
That's great. That's great. That's what I like to hear. That
Yeah.
that
What about you, Tim?
yeah. I'm good. It's cold out, man. I work outside. It's cold out. It's brutal. I'm tired, but I'm
Yeah.
here, man, and I'm ready for our
It's
show.
beginning of winter. It's a rough time for those outdoor jobs.
Yeah, listen, check this out. The radio audience might or might not appreciate this, but I'm working kind of out in the middle of nowhere at this big manufacturing facility, and I'm climbing down off a scaffolding, and like seven miniature bulldog-looking pugs come running up and charge me. Like we're on like 100 acres. Seven of the cutest little dogs just kind of come up and assault me. It was absolutely hilarious. So I don't know. I thought
That's
I'd share
great.
that with everybody. It was just, I don't know, one of those weird things that happens every once in a while.
Horrible, but weren't expecting that one. Surprise attack. That's
I'm like, what? Honestly, I was a little bit afraid. Like, was it a pack of rabid dogs? We're out in the middle of nowhere, and they just kind of run up and are barking at me. And then I realized they're kind of all little tiny dogs. And I'm just like, where in the world did they come from? It must have been somebody that worked at the plant, or perhaps one of the truck drivers delivering some goods had a bunch of dogs in his truck. I don't know, but it was weird. I posted a picture of it on Twitter. They kind of circled the whole place, and I don't know, running around yapping, little yip yip dogs running around yipping. It was great. It was just made my day yesterday.
That's amazing. All right, so we do have a few topics to talk about besides the surprise dogs from Tim. We got a libertarian who is elected president now of the U.S. Of Argentina, Javier Milei. We're going to talk about him. We're going to talk about some stuff that Governor Hochul was discussing in terms of helping to identify fake news and conspiracy theories and things like that. So we'll talk about that. Maybe we'll get to some Rochester news about the Police Accountability Board. And a few other things too, that maybe some Elon Musk stuff. We'll talk about that if we get to it. Who knows? Y'all know how the end of the show goes. It's all the weird stuff goes in towards the end or the podcast. So if you're listening on WYSL, of course, make sure you look for the podcast, where we oftentimes go for another 40, 50 minutes afterwards talking about other random things.
Yeah.
And so either find us on the podcast or listen live, like our folks here on YouTube, on Facebook, on Twitter, where you can leave your comments, participate in the show, things like that. But all right, let's jump into it. Tim, what's going on in Argentina?
Well, Kevin, just out of nowhere, first of all, what has been going on in Argentina is decades worth of poverty based on a crumbling financial system and an increasingly authoritarian and compassionate government that was growing like Amazon. Okay. So the currency was constantly being devalued. They were simply printing
300% inflation in the last year.
Yeah, like crazy
wild numbers. Yeah.
So they get this TV guy, this TV economist, like me and you, Kevin, just a guy talking about economics, but a bit more fiery. Some people have likened him to Donald Trump, but he's basically an anarcho-capitalist. He's like, hey, if you want to sell a kidney, sell a kidney. Like, he's that kind of guy, like you want to build a road, you build a road. Well, you put up a toll, like, let's do this. He hasn't gone quite that far, but he is saying there is room to privatize a lot of services that the government are offering. He is talking about slashing the Argentinian government.
Literally, he said he should take a chainsaw to the government and held a chainsaw over his head.
Yeah, he's a bit theatrical.
There's a bit of showmanship to it, for sure. It's he and he does talk about, like, in addition to like the showmanship side, he talks about eliminating agencies, and he had a video out where he's like, all right, this agency is going to go, and this agency is going to go, and this agency is going to go. And we had talked about this guy on the show before too, because there's a runoff election that had to happen. And so he ended up winning. He won the election, and Argentina has chosen to go in, at least at this level, a much more libertarian direction that the rest of the legislature isn't quite there yet. He's only going to have a handful of seats in the party in the legislature to be able to help him out with some of these changes, or he's going to have to find some compromises or hope people move over, seeing the wind shifting. But it's interesting and exciting, and hopefully, like, the showmanship isn't like all there is to it, right? And I say that because, like, as you kind of mentioned earlier, people kind of compared him to Trump, right? Like, I think Washington Post called him a Trump-like libertarian, and a lot of libertarians were like, whoa, hey, no, Trump libertarians nothing to do with each other. Like, those aren't things at all. I think the way I took it, what's that?
It's fair to draw that distinction, like,
which is true. Trump is not a libertarian. Like, even if folks like him, that he's not a libertarian, like, at all. Like, not even a little bit. And like, even the libertarian things he did almost felt like either on accident or out of spite. sometimes.
I would agree with that. They were definitely accidental. Some were spiteful. And the things that he promised that were libertarian, like, you know, arguably fiscal restraint is libertarian.
Yeah.
Trump did not meet any sense of fiscal restraint,
Not at all.
everybody. I think
He
we all
ran on
know
like,
that.
oh yeah, we're gonna cut the deficit in half in like 2 years. I'm gonna get done. We're gonna eliminate it. And no, it's all bluster. And so people see kind of that like that bluster, the maybe outlandish rhetoric, the showmanship, sometimes like the jabbing that goes on with this guy down in Argentina, and they're like, oh, that's Trump-like behavior. By which I mean, again, not the policy, hopefully, but like the theatrics and the aggressiveness in which this guy approaches politics, right?
He has said some amazing things publicly that occasionally, if you guys stick around for the after show and Tim gets on one of his rants, I'll come close to what this guy said. But even I, like, 3 beers in, don't go that far. You know what I mean?
Like, there's some of it's like it's a bit crass. Some
yeah,
of it.
I'd say.
And like it certainly makes a point. And actually to that end, I think there's a bunch of libertarians out there who are like, see, we can do edgy messaging and it can work. I'm like, well, look, it might not work for 2 reasons. Like, it works for this guy because Argentina is such a mess.
Yeah.
They're desperately looking for something different. Like, as bad as New York State is and the US generally can seem at times, we are not 300% inflation. Like, it's not great. What we have is not great. It hurts families, like, and we've talked about like inflation and the economy and all that. It's not like the level of inflation, the level of unemployment, the level of economic dysfunction, the level of control that exists in Argentina is like very extreme, and people are pivoting the other way. And he was like the only voice that was seriously advocating for a radical shift in the other direction, right? So that works for him too. I mean, quite frankly, like his edginess, he's cool enough to pull it off. Not everyone is. Like, it's a personality thing. Like, there's some people, like, I hate to be mean about it, but there are a lot of libertarians who are edgy but are not cool enough to pull it off. Myself included. Like, I'm not that guy.
No, I'm edgy, but I'm not that cool either. And I try to be funny, and I really enjoy doing this show, and I really enjoy those times where I think I make you laugh and I make our friends laugh. Like, I really enjoy that. But this guy has kind of got a live wire. And I think your point about Argentina, being like a complete disaster as compared to the United States, where we're experiencing some systemic problems that are real, and that we're doing them slower, but we're hurting as many people. And we did, with the COVID lockdowns, we contributed to an increase in poverty in the world, and I think that's contributing to the violence in the world. And that's these things are real. But this guy has a real knack for just spitting it out there and making people laugh and go, "Oh my God!" And do we have a path out of this? And he's saying, "Yeah, we do."
Yeah. In that case, they've he's shocked Argentina out of like the socialist spiral that they found themselves in for the last 20 some odd years. And because again, Argentina, like, just keep in mind, like, like reading up on it a bit and kind of knowing a little bit about, like, they are a resource rich country. They have been like at several points in history, they have been like wealthier than like France and Germany. Like, it's not like a country that has nothing going on. It's like it's big. There's a robust, or has been historically, a robust economy, robust trade networks. Like, it's like, there's a pretty legitimate thing happening there in the past. But like Venezuela, they have done an incredible job of squandering that.
I mean, we can't overstate that. Like, when the government becomes purely parasitic, the issues are real. They went too far, right? Venezuela's even worse, but
these are like wealthy, successful countries that had high standards of living, like at times like comparable, if not like exceeding, chunks of the United States.
Yeah,
and they ruined it. It's the socialists ruined it. That's
socialism. Parasito, like that's my tribute to Javier there. But there's a parasitic function that government brings out, and it has to be curbed and put in check. And frankly, let's see how it goes. Now, one of the things that I do like about his messaging is it is bold and it is brash. And you're right that we may not be cool enough and our problems may not be bad enough to make that work. But also, I think that there are times where bold, brash, humorous messaging is important. And I think that we're going to get some of that in this upcoming election cycle. I think that you and I do a pretty good job of staying bold and brash, but remaining pragmatic. But I think there's a time for like, hey, look, Biden and Trump, that's literally the best we can do. And they're both literally offering us the same thing. Biden has continued so many of Trump's policies, including devaluing and spending so much money that we don't know what to do with. So I don't know, Kevin, like is can it work? Can bold messaging save the Libertarian Party? And we've got guys out there offering bold messaging. Josh Smith, for example, Michael Reckenwald, for example, like
Oh boy, no, not not that guy.
which
Nope,
one?
that guy,
Reckenwald? You don't like
Michael.
him?
Well, both of them. No, both of them not.
They're my
Nope.
favorite so far.
I will literally leave the party if either one of them ends up being the presidential
Oh my
candidate.
God,
They're
no.
so
How can that
no,
be?
they. But Michael Rectenwald, like, oh, the Jews are canceling me. That guy,
He didn't say
Yeah.
the Jews are canceling me.
he did.
He did not.
He
We'll have
did.
to check that out. Well, you and I will have to fight over
Yeah,
that.
no, we'll maybe we'll talk about that. That's see, folks, that's usually the stuff we talk about after the show, after the radio show. So WISL audience, maybe we'll get to around to that thing. No, I get like the level of bold messaging that I'm comfortable with. I like either like the pragmatic, like bold and sometimes fun stuff that Larry Sharp puts out, or like the fun stuff that Spike Cohen puts out, like. I like what he does, right? Like he can make things fun and also be able to pivot back to like, and here's a serious issue, while also like making jokes and having fun and like drawing attention to serious matters like that. Like to me, like he's on that spectrum of things. Like he's like the best we got. But it's yeah, I don't know that same. And again, like my thing about this is like. Again, not everyone can pull it off. Being bold in and of itself, or being edgy in and of itself, isn't enough to win you converts, right? And you and I have kind of debated this. Like, okay, like just because you say something controversial that gets people talking about you does not mean you have advanced the cause.
The LP, the New Hampshire strategy.
Yes. Yeah, no, that's exactly what it is. And like, and again, what this guy has done in many cases is like the boldness of what he does is, again, he makes it theatrical of like, again, he's going to cut government. He talks about like literally he's like pulling apart like, okay, we're going to cut all these agencies, and that's like shocking in and of itself. Like, what do you mean you're just going to cut agencies? Like, you're just gonna do that? No, like they need to shock themselves out of like the stupor that they've been in for decades, and like that in and of itself is enough to like be controversial, but it advances the point. It advances liberty. It's not a distraction to the fundamental point of advancing the cause. And I think sometimes some of the bold messaging that comes out of I know people can't see my air quotes on Radio Land, but the bold messaging that comes out of like the Libertarian Party sometimes misses the mark in that it is controversial without framing it in a way that people understand how what they want to do is advance liberty and improve their lives.
Okay, I think that's fair. I do like your approach to a lot of things. We both tend to move in a pragmatic vein, so I respect what you're saying there. As you know, I've enjoyed some of LPNH's tirades. I do enjoy bold messaging, and I do enjoy like the Libertarian Party's anti-war stances. Like they've been very good down the road, and they got smeared with some Russian propaganda, and they got accused of collaborating with Russian operatives, and I just don't think that was fair. So I don't know, like when we get back around to it, where would you go, Kevin? You know what I mean? Like anywhere, he says.
Yeah, no, not that. But I don't know. I say I don't I get like the need to kind of like break out of the mold. I get the need to like draw attention. Like that is a necessity.
It is.
Just not everything does that in a constructive way. And listen, my point is like that. So people like Spike Cohen have been better at drawing attention to these things in a constructive way, and that I can appreciate.
He's been amazing. He's had some big successes. He's worked really hard. He's built a community. You're right. Like he has done some great things, and he's keeping himself in the news. Yeah, but he says he's not running for president.
I know, and again, some of that is like you could be an effective activist and like advance the cultural cause of liberty without running for office. That's fine, and like that's kind of what we're trying to do here. Neither of us are running for office right now.
Yeah.
We're trying to advance the kind of cultural and intellectual cause of liberty by having a radio show that hopefully the folks are listening to and enjoying.
Yeah.
And he's doing his own version of that through activism and social engagement. And then a way to do that too is by running for office too. Like you can run, like it's a bit different. Like if you're a podcaster who's doing this stuff, like Josh, for instance, okay, like that's your thing, and you're connecting with your audience, and maybe you're advancing liberty in your own way. It's a bit different when you're like, okay, now I am putting myself in a position where, although unlikely, like I could be running the country, I think people have a different set of expectations around like what that's going to mean if you are actually elected to that position or running for Congress or even running for town council, right? Like that's kind of my philosophy on like pro-liberty candidates, whether you're Republican or Libertarian or whatever, like running for office, is that like it's a risky strategy and rarely, if ever, works to just say like, well, cut everything. And I know that worked for Javier Milei, but like most of the time people want to like, okay, like what's this like actually going to do to our lives? And unless your country is so messed up that literally any alternative is going to work, most of the time just being, oh, cut it, and like we're not going to worry about what happens later. And again, this guy Javier Milei is also made like cases for here's why it's going to make you better, right? He does the theatrical stuff and then reinforces it because he's an economist and he educates people on like Mises and he educates people on Hayek and he educates people on free markets. Like so, like there's that reinforcing element of like here's the fun thing to get your attention, but also like for real, this is how it's going to make your life better.
All right. He's been painted kind of viciously in the mainstream media as a far right libertarian. Maybe we'll talk more about that after the break. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I know we're running up, but we are running up on time. As you said, we got like maybe like 30 seconds left. So when we come back here on the Free Solution on WS, so we're gonna talk maybe a couple more minutes about what's going on in Argentina, and I know we've kind of went on a tangent about like libertarian like strategy a bit. Sorry about that, folks, but hopefully you enjoyed it, got a little insight there. And we'll be back to talk about that and maybe Governor Hochul stuff. Talk to you in a few minutes. All right.
The Governor Hochul is a train wreck. Just a train wreck.
Evergreen statement.
Yeah. Oh my God. Like, homeschooling is exploding, Kevin, and we're which is fine. That's fine. They can bankrupt themselves. That's great. They're going to take a lot of us down with them, though.
Yeah, that's the problem. I don't know. I'm gonna have like a because like what she says in theory to me is a good thing. In practice, we'll see how it ends up.
We'll talk about it during the show because they'll plug in they'll fill in the gaps. They'll presuppose everything into the minds of the kids. They're not talking about them, teaching them to be rational thinkers, which would eventually lead them to some sort of libertarianism. Like it's going to be they're going to present the sides as this side is right, that side is wrong, and we're the side, in power. So when you're old enough to vote, you'll vote for us. Like that's how it's going to
go. One of the songs that I used to love playing. There's oh my God, who's that folk singer? It's a guy. There's a song about like what I learned in school today. Pete Seeger. Oh my goodness, I can't believe I forgot Pete Seeger. Like we can't. Like every time I've tried to play like basically any music on Facebook, YouTube, etc. Like our stuff gets shut down. So like we can't play a song. But I love being like, there's a part of me that I love being on like one of the smaller stations. Well, and we could do this if we are just playing it on WYSL, but not on
Oh, okay.
we can't do it on online, the streaming services. But playing that song, what did you learn in school today, dear little boy of mine? Do you know that song?
I've heard it. I think
I can't
you
play
probably
it.
have to sing a couple more stanzas.
I learned our government is not so bad, and it's the best we've ever had.
Oh my God, no,
Yeah.
I've never heard that song. I hope my kids have never heard it.
Yeah, I mean, no, it's great. You know, learned that Washington never told a lie, and oops.
Okay,
I learned that soldiers seldom die. I learned that everybody's free, and that's what the teacher said to me. That's what I learned in school today. That's what I learned in school.
Oh, so he's being a little sarcastic then, right?
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
I mean, he's got a line like about like police too. He's like, learned that policemen are my friends. I learned that justice never ends. I learned that murderers die for their crimes, even if they make a mistake sometimes. And then verse 3 is, I learned our government must be strong. It's always right and never wrong. Our leaders are the finest men, and we elect them again and again.
Oh my God!
What did you learn in school today?
That's a
it's a great song. John, I know Pete was a socialist. John on, but
not all socialists are bad.
No, he is. Like some. I get like I'm not endorsing Pete Seeger's politics. I'm just saying that what did you learn in school today is a banger. Is all I'm saying. Like check it out. It's a good song. So I was gonna say Pete Seeger. I never get those things right. Shelly, you had it right. Shelly on YouTube. Used to sauna with him, huh?
All right.
Right on. All right. Anyway, Pete Seeger tangent aside, hope you enjoyed my lyrics. I got the nice microphone for it.
You do, and you sing like a singer.
Yeah. Exactly. That's that is legitimately it's like one of my favorite folk songs. Just because it's fun, it's sarcastic, it mocks the government and like school indoctrination. And it's decades old. So it's a good one. Anyway, we should probably go back to the main show in a minute or so, and I guess we'll wrap up the conversation about Javier Milei and Argentina, things like that, and then we'll talk about some New York State stuff.
All right, Kathy
Hochul, one of our favorite evergreen.
She makes practically every
politicians. Show. What's that?
Oh, she makes practically every show.
She does. Always, man, what would we do without her? She's always giving us stuff to talk about. All right, let's head back in 3, 2. Welcome back to A Free Solution. I'm Kevin Wilson today, joined by Tim the Freedom Barian O'Connor.
I'm still here, Kevin, and once again, our benevolent authoritarian leader of this state, leader of the free world, has directed Homeland Security. Now, first of all, I'm not sure how that works, but like, how does the governor of New York State get to direct Homeland? But she's directing.
There's like a New York State
Homeland Security. Is that okay? All right, we've got our own Homeland Security. That's even better news if you think about it. But anyways, she's directed them to come up with I can only think of it as a teaching pod where the school system, the government educational system is going to help kids discern online hate speech, misinformation, and disinformation. Kids are going to be able to spot this stuff after this class just like that. It's magic.
Yeah, no, that's like the idea. Her framework was, tools to spot conspiracy theories and misinformation, disinformation, online hate, and we'll I don't know, maybe I'll play a little bit. This is like a tweet. You guys can see it.
Today I'm directing the director of Division of Homeland Security and Emergency Services to develop media literacy tools for K through 12 in our public schools. This will teach students and even teachers to help understand how to spot conspiracy theories and misinformation, disinformation, and online hate. Start talking about what we're seeing out there. Give the teachers the tools they need to help these conversations in school.
So, Tim, are you excited that students are going to have new ways of identifying conspiracies for you to talk about them with?
I am actually terrified by this because honestly, Kevin, one of the things when I grew up, one of the things I had teachers teach me was to take a look at advertising and take a look at news and take a look at like, hey, here's communist propaganda, what might be wrong with it? And we'd have to kind of formulate a response. And you know, when you think about like extra clean super tide and how, you know, how we can take our own brain, examine claims being presented, break them down, and explore them on our own. Now, I've got this feeling, I've got this horrible feeling that is not the goal here.
Yeah. And I tend to agree with you. Like, it's like your experience of like learning that in school, or learning that like, you know, online or through family, you know, like wherever you're learning that ability to think critically about a story being presented to you is like essential to a free society. And a lot of like arguments around like maybe we need to censor speech or to censor speech are centered around, well, people can't do that effectively, right? So because they can't do it effectively, we have to keep this misinformation like out of the public's hands by shutting down Twitter, shutting down Facebook. So having those critical thinking skills and including learning that in school, I think is important, right? Like you need to be able to think like, when is this like story presented to me shaky on facts? How do I learn about the evidence backing up the claims made in the story? How do I research for reliable sources to understand like what's really going on? Can I understand a story or a point of view without like internalizing it? Like, which, yes, you can. Like, I think many of the folks listening to the show can read something, understand the point of view that they're making, and then also think like, well, some parts of their argument might not be backed up by facts, and like I should be skeptical of this. And then you should be skeptical of any politicians. Like when Governor Hochul makes claims, anytime she talks about the Second Amendment, half the time she talks about like free markets. Like when she's talking about this stuff, like, yeah, you should be skeptical of this stuff. You should think critically. Are the claims that she's making around these policies true? What evidence is there to back it up? But the direction you were going was, is that what's going to happen here? And
look, we have narratives, right? That bribing big businesses to come here at the expense of the residents in our state and at the expense of businesses that have been here for decades, right? For us to carry new businesses on our back to pretend that is a net positive is any kind of level of critical thinking can see hundreds of problems with it. And they just say things like, well, for every manufacturing job, there's 5 support jobs in the community. So therefore, this is a good idea, regardless of the cost. And they're not going to be getting into those kinds of critical thinking situations. They're going to be, well, how do you figure out if somebody's telling you the truth? And they're going to be like, ask a trusted source like your teacher. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like that.
Yeah. And actually, like that, like that's like the most like generous way you could put it too, because like that's where I would go. It wouldn't even be like nakedly partisan or anything, right? It wouldn't be like you can only trust Democrats or something. I don't think it would be that appeal to authority, right? Like if you're not sure, ask a teacher, ask like look at government resources, which sometimes can be truthful, but aren't always, you know,
right.
Like data can be manipulated in all sorts of ways. And it's worth like thinking critically about like when the Biden administration puts out like something related to like jobs numbers and then like spins it like the economy as like, hey, everything's great. And, you know, this is Bidenomics and everything's awesome. Like, can you think critically about that? Okay. But why do so many people say that the economy is not great right now? Is it just that everyone's like mired in negative partisanship, or is there something else going on that we haven't considered? What other evidence is available?
It's a vast right-wing conspiracy, Kevin.
Right.
Vast right-wing.
Yeah, it just gets dismissed as like, it's just like a bunch of unhappy Republicans. No, it's maybe it's deeper than that. And so like that's where it is. Like I would worry like what would end up happening here is like it ends up educating students to be skeptical of like conservative and libertarian narratives, in not educating them on ways to think critically about claims made from various resources from different news outlets, both, you know, the national news outlets, like it's CBS News types of thing, down to like a local blogger. Like, can you think critically about both those things? And it can't just be, oh, one's a professional and one's not, right? That's if you're teaching logical fallacies, which I learned in school too. Like if you're, that's, gosh, it's like an appeal to experience. Is that the one I'm thinking of? But the point is it's a logical fallacy, right? Like, appeal to authority,
right.
Yeah. Right, like, oh, someone's been a journalist for 30 years, so you can trust what Dan Rather says. You know, like, no,
right.
that's not not a good enough. What's that?
Yeah, we got to go with the Nobel Prize winning economist or a former State Department economist, and then you would get your answers about the economy from Robert Reich and Paul Krugman. Okay, like these guys are paid agitprop, right? Like they say whatever the administration wants them to say, and they get accolades for it, and it's a real problem.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, like every media outlet like does this sort of thing. It's like, okay, we've brought this person on who's a 3-star general, and that's again setting you up to think like, oh, this is a person who is a military expert. They are retired. They understand the military. Blah blah blah. Right. Yeah. That might be true. They might be coming in with a lot of experience and knowledge. But then if they're like, and that's why I recommend launching all the nukes now. Okay, like you better have a real good argument for that, man, because like I'm coming in pretty skeptical, but like just their position, their experience, their authority is not enough to win an argument, right? And so, I think like both you and I are like probably pretty similar in how we approach like media literacy, and it's just like, okay, what's how do I know I can trust something? And I know you jump into some conspiracy stuff. Well, no, like it depends. Like you and I have like different like types of trust though, right? Because like I'm more likely to not reflexively say like whatever coming out of the government is untrue, because I'll see something and I'll be like, that seems like a bold claim. Where's the evidence of that? And I'm gonna go and look for it, right? And you're like, I'm gonna save myself some time and just assume it's untrue. Correct. And like, I'd probably be happier if I just did what you did, because like I come to the same conclusion all the times.
Yeah, no, I know. And look, there is a lifetime of experience here, and there was a time in my life where I have some guilt. Like there was a time where I thought exporting democracy at the point of a gun was a good idea, right? Like I was a neocon who thought that the United States could do no wrong, and that the fact that we could fight wars on 7 different fronts was actually a good thing. And that even war being good for the economy, as soulless as that made me feel, that even then was still a reality. And now when I look at it and I realize that everything is, you grow, you learn, and you critically think your way through these things. The reality is that war destroys wealth, the wealth of other nations, the wealth of our nations. So I don't want to belabor the broken windows fallacy in war, and so, but I got my anti-war speech in today, Kevin.
Yeah, yep, that's good for every episode of A Free Solution.
Yeah.
But yeah, so again, just jumping back quickly into the media literacy stuff. Again, when I read like I remember reading about like the ivermectin stuff, right? I was like, okay, essentially claim all the experts are claiming this doesn't work. What actual evidence is there? That's like I want to dig through it, and I know that like in the world of politics that's tough, because like you want to like label everything like immediately either like misinformation, or you want to like hold it up as like true or not true based on that. And that's how social media ended up regulating a lot of this stuff, right? Like, and it ended up being like any discussion of like masks maybe like not being effective, like was banned on social media. And I was skeptical of that stuff, but like I was like, man, there's no way, this is ridiculous to like ban any like discussion of like, well, maybe like masks aren't effective in all situations. But I remember stuff getting like shut down, or shutting down conversations around like, hey, there's a possibility that maybe COVID leaked from like the Wuhan like labs, right?
Right.
And like misinformation, shut it down, don't talk about it. And again, that stems back to people have so little media, like the assumption on the parts of like folks at Facebook, politicians, that people have so little media literacy that they can't like be trusted with allowing a different point of view. But in their arrogance, they ended up shutting down points of view that may have been correct and seem likely, in fact, to be correct in several of these cases.
Yeah, at the very least, mask mandates were not effective. Period. And you and I have talked like, okay, you want me to wear a mask going into a nursing home when there's 200 old people? I'm gonna wear a mask. I get it, right? But like, mask mandates, closing schools, these are things that people were saying, hey, the data isn't backing this stuff up. And they went ahead out of the weirdest metric of all, out of an abundance of caution. And so then you get to the point where I'm like, well, they just did it to like destroy the economy. And I know that sounds crazy, right? Or they just did it to exert control. And I also know that sounds crazy, but like they went too far, they went too fast, and they basically increased the net poverty throughout the world. And that is frustrating.
Yeah. So no, it is like the effects were devastating, right? And again, that comes back to like, okay, we need people to be able to identify misinformation, but like the policies that the health experts were pushing in some cases, again, like even the in the beginning, the confusing, like, don't wear a mask. Like, remember like the first like month of COVID, they're like, don't wear a mask because, it's not going to do anything. And really they're like, it ended up being a noble lie so they could save masks and divert them to like healthcare workers, right? Like that's what it ended up coming out.
That's what they said, Kevin.
They said, right?
That part of it.
Yeah, well, I mean, but like it's one of those things where like, okay, like what is it? And like, why shouldn't I be skeptical of like public health authorities when they've gone back and changed their mind on stuff, right? Or and not even that they've changed their mind, because changing your mind is fine. But when they've done things that have been draconian and accused people who are skeptical of either one of their narratives of wanting to kill people, and therefore their access to social media, and in some cases, like not necessarily here in the United States, but in some cases, like losing your actual freedom or losing your job, right? Which did happen in some cases in the US. Like that's the type of dangerous, like cultural consequences and actual like substantial consequences that can come from taking the wrong lessons around teaching media literacy. So when Governor Hochul does this, that's something we should watch out for, right? Like what does she mean? What does New York State mean by media literacy? And hopefully it teaches actual critical thinking skills and not just a deference to authority.
Yeah, sure. So basically, guys, just so you know, I already checked with my 17-year-old to see if he's gotten any information on how to discern, information from disinformation, from misinformation, and online hate speech. And we haven't started spending money on it yet. So he's probably going to be out of the system before they enact this. So I'm kind of happy about that. And homeschooling, guys, is, exploding. So
yeah, no, and a lot of reasons for that. But anyway, we are coming up on our break. Thanks again for joining us here on A Free Solution. We're going to be back in just a few minutes. Talk to you soon.
All right, there he is. Let me show this comment.
John Barron says, "Who created the toilet paper scare? Was there a shortage because they were making all the masks for us?"
I don't know, but it was right at the peak of my owning a vacation rental house, and I had like I don't know, 60 rolls of toilet paper there. So I was solid. Like I had all
You're
the
ready.
toilet paper I needed.
Wait. Did you do that like mid toilet paper panic, or did you just like happen to have stocked up?
Well, the bastards, Kevin, shut down my vacation rental, right? So I'm like, what am I going to do with all this toilet paper? And then like I sold it on eBay, like $6 a
Hey,
roll. No,
smart.
I didn't, but I could have. I had so
Yeah.
much toilet paper, I didn't even know what to do with it. I
So
had like 8 cans of Lysol. I was just like, I'm all set, man. This is good. I'm golden.
So I've talked about this on the show before, but like we did like the panic buying like a month and a half early,
Oh,
right?
nice.
And so the reason why is like my wife had read this book called Station 11, right? Which is like it's like a book about like a much more serious pandemic, like 80% fatality rate pandemic, right? And she's just like,
Okay.
oh man, that's so crazy, and like it's just freaking me out, and I don't like it. And like I heard about this virus going around China, and I'm like, nah, like nothing like that could be that bad. It's not like it's not gonna work. And I was just like, you're freaking yourself out over nothing. She's like, all right, well, just like, can we like go and like stock up on stuff? Like, what if like we get quarantined for like a month, like in this book, and like we have to just survive on the food in the house? Like, all right, we should like. I feel like I've been like slacking on my prep and stuff. Like let's fill up our basement. Let's get some stuff. So we bought like a bunch of toilet paper, paper towels, like canned goods, all this stuff. And then like as soon as everything shut down, she's like, see, I told you so. I told you. I called it. I knew this pandemic was gonna happen. I felt it.
She was
like
right.
we were ready. And I was like, you know what? All right, that's fair. And we ended up giving away like half our toilet paper because there's a bunch of like coworkers who like, I can't buy there's none in Wegmans, there's none in Walmart, there's none in Costco. Like,
yeah. Hey, John, thanks for joining us. Kevin and I were talking about you earlier in the show. Hope you're feeling better. Hope you stay after it, man. Hope everything works, because that's what you deserve, right? That's going to be good stuff.
Yeah, man. Hope you're doing good. Anyway, so, all right. What are we going to talk about for the last topic, Tim? What we got?
Well,
talk about PAB, or you want to talk about Musk?
I have a couple random things. We should probably talk about Musk a little bit, and then offer to do a deeper dive on it on a different show. But he's going to sue Media Matters anyway. Yeah,
let's talk about the Rochester thing for like a minute.
Yeah, okay, do that.
Is it folks? We got to talk about local stuff, and I know several of you listening online, you're not local, but hopefully you'll find this topic relevant, related to the Rochester.
I think our friends will like this topic. I think we've discussed it a few times. I think it's important to them, the concept, and it's important to see what the government does with the concept over time.
Yeah, 100%. All right, and John says he's getting better. Thank you, guys. I'm glad you're getting better, man. All right, let's go back in 5. Welcome back to A Free Solution. I'm Kevin Wilson today, joined by Tim, the Freedomarian O'Connor.
Hey, Kevin, I'm still here. And look, we've talked about in the past some local issues of import. You have a citizens advisory board in Rochester for the police. How would you describe that?
Yeah, so it's not called that, but like same concept. If folks have something similar, say a police accountability board, and this came up for a vote a few years ago, passed like pretty overwhelmingly in the city of Rochester, and the
a good idea,
like in theory, and I told folks I voted for it. I thought it was a good idea. I thought like, hey, there should be someone outside of the police themselves when the police are accused of misconduct, that they're looking into it and hopefully providing some objective voice to say like something went wrong or didn't go wrong, because people were skeptical that police officers would face any kind of discipline for misconduct when judged by other police officers who are, they're trying to close ranks, they're trying to protect their friends. Like, and then I don't mean that in necessarily a pejorative way. Like, it's just like how people are, right?
Sure. Even give them the benefit of the doubt, right? They still have to, like, if they have the police officers are going to give themselves the benefit of the doubt, and in a way they should. But all we're saying is a objective citizen panel should be able to take a look at these things. Now,
And I know
arguably,
people are skeptical of it because they're like, oh,
Sure.
it's only the anti-police activists who can join this, and
Right.
okay, fair enough. Like there should be some normies on there. I was not necessarily requiring it, but I think it could be a good idea to include like police officer or former police officers or police officers who like kind of live outside the area and this type of stuff to
Absolutely.
provide that point of view. I get it. And so they were in addition to like the board itself, there's like a staff that like has resources to go out and investigate incidents and say like provide a report and do this thing. And then the extra part of this, which is the reason why we're talking about this again, is that they wanted the ability to actually directly provide like consequences for any investigation they had. Consequences meaning things like suspensions, meaning things like dismissals, things like that, right? So like this board wanted, and in the original proposal wanted to like be able to actually discipline officers for accusations of misconduct, and what Lovely Warren at the time said, the police union said, and like the kind of whole police infrastructure says, like, no, that's not your purview to do. Like, we are the only ones who are able to do discipline. And then Police Accountability Board advocates said, well, without teeth, are any reports that we have going to fall on deaf ears? And is it really providing any level of accountability if we issue findings and no one ever acts on them? Right. And so
Fair
like
question.
what and is there any like level of accountability that would go into like, do you need to elect the new mayor to get like actual accountability for police? If the mayor weren't and the chief of police who was appointed by the mayor, if they weren't acting on findings of serious misconduct by officers. So but the another ruling came out this week that basically said that they're not going to really be able to have that ability to do that the state legislature would need to act in order to give a separate body the ability to actually discipline officers. So Tim, what do you think about that?
Well,
like, you're outside of this a little bit, but
sure. I'm sympathetic to the job that police officers do. I've said that on shows in the past. I'm sympathetic to people wanting appropriate policing. We saw in Rochester a 9-year-old get tased because she was acting up. I'm sure that there's more stories if we search through our memory banks of things that don't look appropriate. And it would be nice to have accountability. Now, of course, I'll go to the libertarian solution of, let's end qualified immunity. Let's fix this with a self-correcting mechanism. And then perhaps we wouldn't need a police advisory board to begin with because police would police themselves, right? So I don't know. It's a complicated situation, right? Especially when we have so many layers of government involved in everything.
Yeah. There's government sure is involved in every aspect of our lives. And Shelley chimed in on YouTube, said Albany PD has a community oversight committee for decades. It's a pretty common thing for that to happen. It was kind of like Rochester has had like various versions of this in the past, and like this was meant to be like a more robust version of that. Like, in response to, I'm trying to find this guy's name, but like in response to incidents like, the guy getting pushed over in a wheelchair at a bus stop by police officers with, seemingly very little accountability. And now like incidents like, what happened with Daniel Prude and, again, that the 9-year-old girl little girl being pepper sprayed. Like there's stuff like that where like, I think most normal people are like, hey, that's pretty appropriate. If you can't like control yourself and find better ways to like get a child to calm down in a frightening situation, then maybe this isn't the job for you, or at least you should face consequences for acting inappropriately in your job, because every other job would have consequences for like things less serious and less traumatic than that. So like in terms of like being able to mete out actual punishment, like I thought that they should be able to do that, because that's like the check on like inaction that often ends up happening in many police departments with the advocacy of many police unions, is that people do see inaction. People do see like officers who are just they get a slap on the wrist, they get desk duty for a few months, and then they're back out, and then they have another incident, and then another serious incident happens, and then they leave, they resign, and then they go to another police department. And so like it's that sort of stuff where it's like, okay, so what better way of accountability do we have? And Tim, as you said, like the better way to do that is like ending qualified immunity and like requiring insurance, right? Like to me, like you're right, we don't even like really need a police accountability board if we just require everyone to go get insurance. It doesn't have to be like any single company, any single entity, just every individual has to be insured. And like the insurance companies, they're just looking out for like, hey, are we going to get money off of this or are we going to lose money off of this? Right.
Yeah.
So they're going to look at the stats. They're going to look at the behavior. They're going to study the patterns of like disciplinary action and reports and things like that. And at some point in time, someone's going to become a risk. Like they just turn it into cold hard numbers. It's not a feeling. It's not I don't like this guy. Infusing any like racial politics into it. It's none of that stuff. It's cold hard numbers. This guy is going to cost us money, or this woman is going to cost us money, and we're not going to insure him anymore.
It kind of covers both things, right? You have an anti-police mayor who's appealing to the woke mob, or you have a pro-police mayor who's appealing to the aggressive policing mob. This qualified immunity takes both of their political views out of the equation, right?
Yeah.
Like
you don't get like the mob mentality of like, oh, we gotta like fire half the police department and defund the police and like none of that type of stuff. Like that's taken out of it. Like just like, are they a risk? Are they likely to get sued for being like abusive again? Like,
again, like that's
right. And again, it's the same thing like doctors are subject to, right? Like we have plenty of doctors still. Like nurses are a separate matter, but but there are plenty of medical professionals out there and they're required to have this liability insurance. And like, same thing, like it's not like the small mistakes, because doctors get sued sometimes. It's a thing that happens. And, a lot of insurance companies will continue to cover people even if they're sued several times over the course of their life. But there's like a level of you're not good at your job anymore. Either negligence or maliciousness, where insurance companies are going to say, nope, not at all. We can't do this anymore. And if that's the case, then you can try for another insurance company and maybe they'll pick you up. But if no one else will pick you up, maybe it's a good thing if no police departments hire you. Like you're too much of a risk, again, not just a risk to insurance, but if you're a risk to insurance, you're a risk to the physical health of people that you were supposed to be serving and protecting.
Fair. That's fair, brother. So I feel like we should talk about Elon Musk is making news again. And originally the news started as Elon Musk responded to an anti-Semitic. Yes.
Sorry, I wasn't going to interrupt you, but Shelley on YouTube said lawyers and accountants, those professionals have insurance too. Like, and business owners, they have insurance for the same reason.
Contractors have insurance. A good-sized business has to have workers' comp insurance. There's lots of ways to protect, and workers' comp insurance can be very inexpensive if you have a good safety record, and it can get wildly inexpensive or wildly expensive if you have a bad safety record. So insurance, as much as I hate big conglomerated businesses, it has value, especially in this situation.
Anyway, you're going to talk about Elon Musk.
Elon Musk, man, making the news, suing Media Matters. It's one of these things where the story starts as Elon Musk responded to an anti-Semitic tweet and Apple's pulling its advertisement. And it was so much more than that it's ridiculous. All right. Like Media Matters, which Media Matters is a left-wing publication. It's a little bit like Southern Poverty Law Center, where they started out with like admirable goals, and the goals have just kind of degenerated into attention seeking and shakedowns, right? Like, so that, of course, that's my opinion. You're free to have a different opinion, but I feel as though that's where they're at. So they came up with a report that's saying Elon Musk is placing Apple advertising next to white supremacist content. And it's like, That's not how the algorithm works. And so Elon's suing him. He wants to take a stand here.
I don't know. I mean, I saw some screenshots. It kind of seems like there was some of that. Because like the way Twitter's advertising works now is that if you're a verified Twitter user, right?
Right.
You can monetize your content, and you know a lot of people do this. So if you get a certain level of engagement, you're eligible to have ads shown in the replies to your tweet. And so if you post something like anti-Semitic and a bunch of people roast you for it, or are joining you in the replies to agree with that sentiment, they're going to show an ad. And I've seen it all the time. Like usually it's ads for like a stupid game or random product or something.
Okay. Yeah.
But Apple is apparently unhappy that some of their ads are being shown in the midst of all that.
Okay, so a high engagement account can end up getting saddled with an Apple advertisement. Is that what you're saying? So
exactly, right.
okay.
And so if people are posting maybe content that like the industry term is like that says brand unsafe, Twitter didn't have good controls for brand protection in that. So like when I buy YouTube ads, for instance, right, this is the thing I do, right? Like I say, okay, there's certain like this is for a children's tourist destination. There's certain content I don't want to show this ad on, right? I consider that brand unsafe. I don't want my client's brand associated with this type of content. So I said ban X, Y, and Z. Just don't show my ads there, right? It's fine. I'm not saying YouTube should demonetize like these other folks. I'm just saying like my client doesn't want their brand associated with X, Y, and Z type of content.
Okay, fair enough. I like where you're going with this.
Yeah, and so that's kind of what Apple did is like, hey, everywhere else we advertise, we have these tools to do this. Where we say like, hey, we don't want to be shown on the Alex Jones videos or something, right? Just not our cup of tea. We don't want to be associated with it.
That's crazy. Everybody should advertise with Alex Jones. I don't know what's wrong with that.
Like whatever it is, right? But like weird conspiracy theories or Nazi stuff or whatever, right? Like just
right.
We don't want to be associated with stuff. So please don't show our ads here. And yeah, essentially, Apple's like, okay, so we're gonna be done until you guys fix this thing. That's how I understood it. And Elon Musk is saying, oh, the only reason Apple had this perception was because of Media Matters reporting. But like to me, like again, as an advertising professional, like I look at this and like I kind of get where Apple's coming from. Like if I can't control where my ads are going, I'm just gonna advertise elsewhere.
No, that look, the way you're framing it makes a lot of sense. The way that I understood it, as always, I kind of rush into situations. So I appreciate the way that you've added a level of clarity there. Now, Elon's counter to that is that for Media Matters to get the screenshots that they got, they would have had to basically been doom scrolling white supremacists, repeatedly refreshing their content to achieve the desired results, because that is not a normal operation of the algorithm. And that obviously there's been some issues with Elon Musk being accused of being open to hate speech, and that X is now a platform where hate speech is increasing.
Yes. So Tim, that's a really interesting topic to talk about, but you know what? We're out of time.
Oh man.
So we're going to have to talk about it in the after show. So if you're listening on WYSL, sorry, we got to cut it off. Just constraints of time. We're going to continue this conversation. Find our podcast, find our online streaming channels. We'll keep having this discussion. But thank you so much for joining us on WYSL. We're going to be back on a free solution next week. Hope you had a wonderful Thanksgiving, folks. Happy Thursday. Take care. Good night. Yeah. We're airing this on Thanksgiving.
Yeah. I had a couple funny freaking for last I had a couple funny last segment news articles too.
Yeah. Well, real quick. We'll I know we didn't get to that in the main news segment, but in the main radio segment, we'll talk about those now because again, you folks are sticking around. We appreciate you.
Yeah,
we'll get to some of these comments too, but wrapping up like the Elon conversation too, just to address to talk about the one point you had made. Like, yeah, chances are, by the way, Elon's not wrong that to find the individual Apple ad in these conversations, they probably did have to refresh like a million times.
Okay.
Like no joke. Like it's weird because again, like I know how this stuff works because I have to like often explain to clients like when they like look for their ads, like, hey, why don't I see my ad that often? All right, like look, there's a whole bunch of different people competing in like bidding on like ad spaces right in front of you,
Okay.
like on a news website. And so like the chances of you seeing the one time out of the 600 advertisers who are bidding on that spot of us winning are not that high, even though in aggregate, these ads are going all over the place to all sorts of people to the right audiences, right?
Right.
So it's one of those things like sometimes like, well, look, I know it might take a while to see your ad. So same thing, like, so for this Apple folks, for those people to see, okay, you have to be in the target audience that Apple was going after. And then Apple had to win that auction to show those ads to those people for the right audience over everyone else that time. Yeah. You probably had to refresh a few times, but that doesn't mean it wasn't
Okay.
happening
All right.
to other people though, right? Like, so other people were probably just like seeing it. So, but Elon's like, so he's not wrong about that, but also like it's kind of a misunderstanding of how like his own advertising platform like works,
Okay.
which is part of the reason why people are roasting him. Again, I think he's just gonna get this one wrong. Like he should just like taken the L and instead of taking the opportunity to improve the platform, just turned it to a culture war thing.
Right. Which I think that he'll probably wise up and correct the problem that you're highlighting here. So like what you're saying is brand unsafe. And if it's a white supremacist account getting hundreds and thousands of like reactions, he could just I guess there would be a contract problem, right? Where that guy bought a verified account and has the opportunity to monetize his situation. Like
Yeah, but like they like buying a verified account, you're not like guaranteed to get ad revenue, right? Like you have a verified account. How much ad revenue have you gotten so far?
me,
Yeah,
millions,
millions.
millions.
Tim, yeah, he's sitting on just buckets of cash right now.
Yeah, but it's not working out for me.
Yeah, not
Want to be
yet, right?
honest with you.
So, yeah, and guys, if you're listening, go follow Tim on Twitter, share his
Yeah,
stuff. Like, let's get Tim some like Twitter, some X money.
yeah. I just need
But
5 million engagements over 3 months, and I've gotten up to 1 million over 3 months. But like honestly, I don't even know what that means, right?
you're
Like I
you're, you're
retweet
close,
something
man.
and I get 1,000 likes or 2,000 likes. I don't know. Millions.
Yeah,
Yeah, millions of pennies. I 0 pennies, all the way down to 0.
Tim has no pennies from Twitter yet. But I mean, listen, it's a thing. But but like, there's no Twitter doesn't necessarily promise you returns on that stuff, and they can set their own restrictions of like, well, if someone, I mean, because someone could say like, I don't want to place my ads around like any political content. Like they could say that, like, just here are these like keywords, like don't show it in accounts associated with these keywords or tweets associated with these keywords. And they could just say, like if they're designing like an effective ad platform, they could just say, just show it in the, because Google does this with like display advertising. Like it's not like it's not new territory. And I haven't used Twitter's ad platform in a while, so maybe this is even a thing. But like you could say, like, I only want to show my ad in the context of people talking about the NFL, right? Okay. So just show like in that context, like because you can run display ads the same way. It's like, okay, I only want this in sports related articles, or I only want this in career growth related articles. They could do the same thing with Twitter. So what I'm really saying is, Elon, please hire me so I can get some of that X money.
And
I'm not going to grow my following. That's for sure.
More importantly, take a free solution to the moon, and at the same time, concurrently, fix his existing problem with his algorithms. So you're killing two birds with one stone there, Kevin.
Okay.
Like it's a win, as the Chinese like to say. It's a win, 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 win. Oh wait, Michael Scott said win, win, win. Not the Chinese.
Not the Chinese.
So look, Kevin. Other than this, there is other big news out there, believe it or not. And actually, the funniest one that I ran across: Snoop Dogg is quitting smoking weed.
Speaking of ads,
Is he though? Yeah. Speaking of ads, that was well played.
Yeah, he was fake. I was,
Fake,
I
fake
was
news.
gonna share it, and I was going, oh my goodness, I can't believe he's actually quitting smoking. No, it was an advertisement for like a fire pit.
Yeah, like a propane powered fire pit. Like no
No,
smoke.
no, it's not propane pad. It's just like a smokeless fire pit. Like it's a thing.
All right, that's cool.
I'm in, terrible job because I'm not remembering the name of the brand right now. Which is funny because like I've looked it up. But like
Oh,
you can buy these like smokeless fire pits now, like like wood fire pits, and just the way the airflow works in those, it just the smoke doesn't like rise up and kind of hit the people around the fire like a normal fire pit does. It just burns a little bit cleaner, and the smoke gets redirected to other places.
Yeah, I've got the article up, and I'm not seeing the name of the fire pit.
Yeah. It shows this. He didn't say no gummies. That's what everyone thought it was going to be. He thought he was going to endorse like an edible brand.
Would have been a nice play, really. That would have worked really well. I was trying to work on a joke of like, do you remember how Donald Trump told Tiger Woods, like, hey, Tiger, like just get back to playing good golf because that's really all you can do. Like when his whole life was dissolving and like his
Yeah.
golf game was off and he was trying to save his marriage, Trump was just like, I'd give Tiger advice. And the advice would be play golf. That's it. That's what you do. And so like Trump giving Snoop that advice, like Snoop, don't quit smoking. Like just smoke. That's what you do. That's your brand. You know what I mean? I thought that would have been great. I don't know. So look,
Solo
Kevin.
Stove is the name of it, which I think I own one of their things actually.
Oh, really?
But yeah, well, gosh, is it them? I own. I think it's them. I own a device charger that is powered by a fire pit. It's a device charger / like micro stove like cooker. So it's
Okay.
like this big, right? I know if you're listening on this podcast, okay, it's like the size like of like my hands cupped together.
I would say
Uh,
7 by 7 inches. 7 inches around is what you're saying, right about
yeah,
now.
exactly, like 7 inch like diameter and or circumference rather, and like you put in like a handful of like sticks and stuff in there. It burns really hot really fast. You have to feed it constantly. It's great for like boiling a pot of water, and then it takes the energy from that and it can like power like charge your phone too. So it's like a hiking
Wild.
stove that does
Really?
that. Yeah.
Oh my
So
God,
no,
that's
it's kind of a
awesome.
cool thing. Like I said, I've used
That's
it
awesome.
like camping before because it's great if I don't want to like start a real fire, but I want enough to just like boil a pot of water or keep a little bit warm. Like you start it up, like the air kind of gets sucked in the way it's built, and it runs a little fan too, and it just pulls in more air really quick. Burns super hot, super fast. You have to feed it all the time, but like you'll boil a pot of water quick and it'll keep you warm. And then charge your phone
That's
too if you want.
that's actually really cool. I can't believe I haven't heard of something like that. All right. Next up, Kevin, in the weird and wild news world, the New York Post is reporting scientists are saying the best way to cook a steak is to microwave it first. Pre-cook it in the microwave. How you
Pre-cooked in the
feeling about that
microwave.
one?
Scientists are wrong, man. Like that, I never claimed all scientists are going to be right. Don't trust the science here.
Do not
They're
trust
wrong.
that. That's a weird statement come from you, but you
I know.
know that. Like that's part of the brand. That's funny. Here's the reality. Okay. If you take a steak out and you unthaw it and you leave it on your like let's say you take it out first thing in the morning and it unthaws by noon and you leave it sitting on your counter and it gets up to room temperature before you start cooking it, you actually experience a little better flavor, right? If it's room temperature all the way through, I don't know why it is. It's a little softer. It cooks up a little better. So what this scientist is saying is if you kind of preheat, actually, then he goes into frying your steak. Like nobody fries a steak that in their right mind. But anyways, if you heat up your steak so that the center of it gets a little bit warmer, it actually cooks faster and it doesn't actually lose anything. The scientist in this situation getting a bad rap. New York Post is playing a little game with your brain here. No one is going to microwave a steak till it's cooked. He's saying warm it up.
Right. So
And then
slight
okay.
misleading headline.
Yeah.
Basically, like defrost it
Yeah.
in the
Quick
microwave, it's
bacon.
fine. So the center isn't like too cold.
Yeah, if you
Um,
pop it out of the fridge and you warm it up a little bit, this makes sense to me because you do like to cook your steaks at room temperature. Like they do. I'm not kidding. I've cooked for
Right.
years. I used to manage restaurants. Steaks taste better if you cook them from room temperature versus taking them out of a cold
But
tray.
you don't really want to leave a steak out at room temperature for too long because then it becomes, you know, a
I
higher
know, man.
risk for
I
food
mean, if you
poisoning.
don't have a dog, you can leave it out for a couple hours. So I mean, literally,
Well,
bacteria
yeah,
doesn't
but
work
like,
as
okay,
well.
like, but you're in like a you know, uh, a food situation where you're you know, a professional restaurant or something. Like you don't want to like leave those steaks out at room temperature. There's health safety regulations for better or worse, right? Like it's a thing.
True.
Right. And like so like to me, like I wouldn't necessarily want to leave like my steak on the counter. Let me tell you, no, best way to cook steaks, by the way, like reverse sear, if you haven't tried that, pretty darn good.
Okay.
So what you do is like you get your oven temperature down to like as low as you can get it. Like it has to be below like boiling temp. Those microwave Nazis. It has to be below boiling temp. So like you think like 180 degrees, and then you just like let it sit there until like the internal temperature. Same thing, right? Like the internal temperature of the steak gets to like basically 120 degrees,
Okay.
right? So same idea, but you're not leaving it on the counter for a while. You're heating it up. You're also kind of drying it out a little bit, right?
Yeah.
So drying out the top a little bit. You flip it part way through. Just, you know, stick a thermometer in it, wait till it gets up to that temperature. And then, you know, if I usually I won't do this on the grill. Usually I'll do it like just in a cast iron pan. You know, get that as hot as you can possibly get it.
Yeah. I do
And
this.
then,
Yeah.
you know, slap it on there for like 45 seconds, let it go, flip it over, you know, sears the outside, you know, put a ton of butter on it.
Yeah.
Honestly,
Yeah.
best way to cook a steak. Only problem is it takes forever, right? Like most of the time during summer, like, man, forget it. I'm just going to throw this on the grill. It's going to be good. Like, but if I want to take my time, this takes like several hours to do. Like this is like a 3-hour process sometimes, like from a refrigerated steak. You know, but doing the reverse sear, so you dry it out a little bit, get it
Yeah.
up to that like, you know, still below medium rare, like rare temperature is how I end up cooking it. It's still below that temperature, and then flash sear it. Great way to
Yeah.
cook steak. Worth a try, folks.
It does sound good. It really does.
There's an Alton Brown recipe. Like look it up. Look up Alton Brown reverse sear steak.
Okay. All right. So look, Kevin, over the years, you and I hanging out together, we've talked a lot about the revolution in transportation, and I want flying cars, but the Magna Corporation out of Canada actually has come up with a solution that I found appealing. They've come up with something they're calling commuter cars, and I don't know if you know about Magna Corporation, but like unfortunately, I listened to a Jordan Peterson podcast, and the CEO of Magna was on there, and he's actually a pretty interesting guy. He's written an employee bill of rights. His employees make as much money as any employees in the world. His managers make more money than most managers in the world. They're all engaged in a profit sharing system. What and how it works is they're a tool and die shop basically who's grown into manufacturing, right? So when you can solve problems and make tools, and you can find other people to solve problems and make tools, that's a unique skill in our society. So this guy's like, when I find somebody that can do that, I bring them in and I make them part of whatever I can do and however I can do it. But regardless of that, he has a very interesting idea. And I want it to be flying cars. He wants it to be tiny cars. So he's like, you can afford, he's coming out with a tiny electric car that goes about 30 miles an hour at most for people that live in cities, because you can fit, all right, a normal lane of traffic, you've got one car in it, right? In a lane of traffic for these tiny cars, it's basically 4 of his tiny cars for one car. And you think about them going 30 miles an hour and eliminating traffic jams, when you would save days of your life. Like I hate city driving, but I'm telling you, the worst thing I hate about it is traffic jams. And if I was going 25 miles an hour instead of being stopped for an hour and a half, I'd be a million times happier.
Yeah. I
It's
mean,
mad.
well, I mean, it's the thing. I mean, it's kind of like how bike lanes work, right? Like it's you you can kind of get around a lot of stuff, and now they have like covered electric bikes, and this is kind of just one step beyond that, right? Like, because if you look at the little cars too, like they're tiny, they don't go fast, little electric cars, one driver, one passenger, like maybe a tiny bit of space. If you had that and you could get around a bit quicker in a city environment, yeah, that's a great thing. It could work for a lot of people. A lot of people, especially who don't have like any vehicles at all, like this is a cheaper alternative. Now, I'm betting they're going to be illegal.
Arguably, this guy's got juice, right? He's got billions of dollars, so they're not necessarily going to fit right into the transportation system as we have it right now. But if we want to correct certain things and we want to maximize efficient use of resources, which I say as a libertarian, I'm less concerned about it. But if I lived in a city and I saw this opportunity to correct what as a libertarian, I see city driving and transportation through and around cities as exactly the unsustainable thing that makes people go crazy over climate change. Like I think that like if I was to explain it, like they're looking at their world and saying this must be what it's like everywhere. And so they extrapolate their misery and force their misery on everyone else. So does that make sense? Am I going
People
too
are
far?
you're saying like urban people panic about climate change because they're stuck in traffic,
Yes.
and then assume
Yes.
that everyone else is
Yeah,
stuck in traffic, and this is what the climate capitalist hellscape looks like.
Yes. Yep. That's what I think they see. They're extrapolating their situation onto the rest of the world, when in fact, if we could just fix that part, if they could just get to and from work easier, they would be so much happier and less climate alarmist.
Yeah, maybe.
Arguably, I know that perhaps I'm being short-sighted, but I think it's also kind of funny.
Yeah, I mean, you can do that with like good trains too. Like,
I don't know. There's something about autonomous travel that people find important.
yeah,
Like,
no, I think that's true. Like again, I've lived in cities where I've had, you know, good access to mass transit, right? And I don't necessarily need the term like public transit. It doesn't need to be government owned, but mass transit, DC, Berlin, and a handful of other places, like briefly, but it can be fine. Like it's good enough, but like sometimes like I need to go off the beaten path a little bit, and it's frustrating. We're like, okay, so what am I gonna do? Am I gonna rent a car? Am I gonna ride my bike there? And what's the option, right? And so having access to a vehicle can be helpful, but
yeah,
especially if you don't live in an area where there's really any robust networks beyond like a core city. Like if you're in parts of Europe, like you can get along in trains like pretty well. Like it's not a big deal. But in the US it's just not a thing. I'm happy to get along on my bike. I don't experience traffic in Rochester because I work less than a mile from my house.
Nice.
So,
That's pretty cool.
but I think for a lot of people, especially if you have to drive across the city or into a suburb, like something like this could be good. And like kind of a if allowed to exist by the federal government, the state government, etc., could be a good way, in an inexpensive way, for people to make short trips of relatively small distance. And if you needed to go somewhere further, that's when you do this. Like, because this something like this, like, we'll share the article with the cars. Something like this, like, imagine you use these like in the same way that you use like electric bikes, right?
Yeah.
Like you just rent them. Like, like I was in Denver 2 weeks ago. Man, there were like scooters and bikes all over the place. Like, okay, I could take the train to wherever I needed to go, and then I'd get out. There'd be a dozen bikes and scooters like right out there. Okay, I need to go another half mile. Cool, just take a bike and go to
Just
where
jump on the bike, put your debit card in, the little kiosk.
Yeah, it's an app. I don't even have to pull out my card. I just like, okay, Lime app. Okay, there's a bike. Scan it. Boom, and I'm off. Right, it's quick. I know someone's mocking 15-minute cities. Like, whatever, man. Like I don't get mad about the 15-minute city thing. Like it is convenient. Like if you live in a place, like I know a lot of folks like living with space. Like I don't mind living in the city. I like being close to stuff. I can walk to 6 different breweries within 10 minutes of my house.
Perfect.
And like Rochester's not even like that dense of a city. I can walk to work or bike to work if I wanted to. I kind of like being able to do that. I got tons of restaurants and libraries and cafes and whatever, like grocery stores. Like I live in a good area. I like being close. I don't have to travel far. My gas, like I spend basically nothing on gas because I drive a Prius and I drive like, no kidding, like 15 miles like a week.
Yeah.
If
But
that.
I, on the other hand, don't like being near any of that stuff. And I like to drive everywhere. So, I mean, that's kind of the essence of freedom.
Yeah, that's a libertarian. Like people should, like you and I have very different perspectives on this, and we should both be able to live the way that we want to live, as long as like you're not subsidizing my lifestyle and I'm not subsidizing yours.
That we can agree.
Right.
Hey, I meant to say it during the radio show because he'd been a guest a few times. And he's done some amazing things for the Libertarian Party, and he's just an all around good guy. But our friend Brian LaRusso, who had recently had a little health scare, but seems to be recovering nicely, actually got himself elected. Kevin, he's kind of a Ron Paul libertarian, leans pretty heavy conservative. But our friend Brian LaRusso got elected to town board up in Hartwick, New York, and
yeah, congrats.
wanted to say congratulations to him, and hopefully he'll catch this show at some point. And he does a lot of really positive work. He's a high energy guy. If you've probably seen some of our shows. Did he ever come on with you and I together?
I thought he did like one time, like we did a joint show, but I don't know. Maybe I don't remember if it was the 3 of us. I think he did, but I know like he's been on with you several times, and I've listened in on those.
Yeah, he's a solid egg, and congratulations to him. And I think he's going to do good things there.
Yeah, 100%. And let me jump back up just because John had left a long comment.
Okay.
Box our whole faces. But so, what's your opinion on the governor's initiative to stop hate speech online from becoming hate crimes in the state, including the plans $3 million to ensure every college campus has a threat assessment management team on site to identify threats? Targeted has offering help for parents to identify if their child is involved in hate speech online, and media literacy tools for all public school students to make them smarter about identifying misinformation online.
He seems to have more information about it than we did.
Dude, we were just like BSing the whole time, John. Come on. But we did talk about this both. I think it was last week and this week, right? Because we had talked about. I mean, just the quick summary. You go back and listen to both those longer segments on, but like the quick summary on both those things is like, I'm skeptical of the governor's plan to direct more state police resources to monitor social media, because I think this is a flimsy excuse to be able to monitor the speech of dissidents and other like people who are a political threat to her. And it's not a new thing to do that. I'm skeptical that the level of threat rises to something that needs $3 million in a dedicated police task force. And same with like the media literacy thing. Again, we talked about it, and I think Tim and I's conclusion on that is media literacy is fine if done right. If it's done where it's an appeal to authority, that stinks and it's going in the wrong direction.
Yeah, that was it, man. John, you definitely hit a subject that Kevin and I had talked about tonight. And offered some a pretty amazing accumulation of details to it, because he did cover the $3 million for the FBI, and then the furthering of basically we saw it as a teaching pod. Like, and look, that's where I get concerned, right? Like where they're going to bring this unit of who do you go to? It's going to be who do you go to when you're wondering about information, right? Like go to your teacher, go to your principal, go to your guidance counselor. It's like, how about, watch a show by Tim and Kevin? That's probably not going to happen. You know what I mean? And it's just another agent of centralizing power. And arguably, I don't want to call it brainwashing, but that's the best word for it, where we're offering our kids a structure that endorses the state as it exists right now. And
And to be fair, we're speculating a bit. Maybe it'll be better than we think, but like
maybe it'll turn out a whole crop of libertarians or look, I'm a big fan of liberals, right? Like that are like, hey, rights are cool and I love everybody, but like, can we fix some things? I like people who frame things that way, or like, yeah, and liberals who say, yeah, you got to have guns because the government sucks, right? Like, those liberals are cool. Like, they're literally cool. I love them. I'm not kidding. Like,
Yeah.
we have a lot of common ground, So, I don't know.
Yeah, I like pro-liberty liberals, but listen, I think for now we're skeptical given Governor Hochul's record of this whole initiative.
Yes, we are.
Just we've seen what her work in the past.
Yeah, we have. She has a track record
Yeah,
that she's gonna run on again.
she sure is. So given her administration and the last administration,
Yeah.
we're not optimistic, but hey, who knows? All right. On that note, I should probably call it a night.
All right, brother. Thank you. Yeah. Thanks everybody for being here.
Thanks, folks. Happy Thanksgiving.
Oh yeah, happy Thanksgiving.